The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and greetings, everybody. My name is Celia Gregory. I work with Hope Street Group, and I have my colleague Brad Clark on the line, and also our new colleague Angelia Ebner from the Arizona K12 Center. And I'll let them get this thing started.
Hello to everybody that is joining us from Arizona. We are so excited to be welcoming not only you to the program information tonight, but also welcoming Hope Street to Arizona. We're very excited to be working with our teacher leaders from around the state and bringing together the tools and support that Hope Street has to offer their teacher fellows, and combining that with the teacher leadership that we are currently fostering here in Arizona.
Excellent. My name is Brad Clark. I'm the director of the Hope Street Group Fellowship in Kentucky. I'm also joined by my colleague, Carrie Patrick, who is a fellow going almost into her third year now, rotating out of the fellowship and moving into an alumni status. She teaches ELA in Fayette County, which is the second largest district in the state, in Lexington, Kentucky, at the STEAM Academy there.
Oops. Hold on. I do apologize.
Hey, this is Carrie. Thanks for having me tonight, and I will be talking a little bit, but I think that it just shows a lot about the program that a teacher fellow is on this call tonight, and the fellowship is really determined by the fellows, and you can really play a major role in the experience. So me being on the call tonight is just one example of how fellows are a part of the entire experience.
So I think that the goal here in the fellowship is to really build the capacity of other teachers by sharing resources and great ideas and sharing and leading professional learning opportunities for teachers. I know that the K12 Center has that history in Arizona, and Hope Street Group hopes to amplify some of that work.
That is true. We hope that our Hope Street partnership will be an alternative pathway for teacher leadership based on the tools that it will provide Arizona teachers. It will give them a chance to really hone in their skills in regards to advocacy and learning more and exploring more around their areas of passion and how we can take that passion and really construct something meaningful through the joint efforts of teachers to really elevate the teacher voice and to help shape policy and make sure that stakeholders understand what it means to be in the classroom in Arizona and what we can do with our combined efforts in order to elevate the profession.
Angela, do you mind advancing to the next slide?
Yeah, I apologize. There was a little bit of a delay on that one, Brad.
You know, I'm just practicing my wait time, which was never one of my strengths while I was in the classroom. So the professional learning we provide really focuses on developing leadership competencies among classroom teachers, helping teachers navigate and develop relational trust with other policymakers, building relationships with their peers, and really engaging in data collection by moderating focus groups, designing surveys, gathering data among their peers, and creating policy recommendations to the Department of Education and other partners within a state.
Thanks, Brad. So, as a teacher fellow, I can talk a bit about kind of what that has really looked like. I'm in my classroom every day, but on top of that, I get to meet teachers from across the state through different conferences and different events. And I have become a teacher leader in the state, and I really see myself as listening to kind of and getting the pulse of what teachers are saying. And we have gotten to take that here in Kentucky to the Kentucky Department of Education and also to other policymakers. Just for example, last year in our legislative session in 2016, we had our big education bill, Senate Bill 1. And at that time, there were a lot of kind of opinions about how Senate Bill 1 would impact students and teachers. And with many other fellows and other teachers across the state, we started gathering some teacher input and teacher voice through some different avenues. And we were able to take that to various policymakers, some who were involved in the creation of that bill, and they decided to kind of table that bill for a year until they could make changes. And a lot of changes were made to it. And so this year, in this legislative session, it passed, but it passed with the understanding that many teacher opinions and voices were heard in that. So that's just one example of something that we've done very specifically where we can talk about here's how teacher voice impacted education policy, the process, and the design in the state of Kentucky. But really all of that wouldn't have been possible if we weren't building relationships with teachers all across the state and listening to them and letting them know that we really are nonpartisan and we really just want to support what they are telling us and taking that back for them. And we do that through using data of all kinds, whether that's through our official data process, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, or if that's using teacher perception and teacher narratives that we're gathering.
Carrie, do you mind to speak, looking at the fellowship expectations on the next slide? Do you mind to speak a little bit to what building a network of teachers has meant, and maybe talking about what a data collection actually looks like for a fellow?
So, like I said, you start in your building and you really think about what is the network that you have closest to you, and that might mean that you have your school and you have your district, but then you start to see connections between the work that's happening. And so I was working in my district on some thinking strategies institutes, which I realized that other districts were doing that. And so I started to see connections between the work that was happening in my district and then the work that's happening in other districts. Or you are maybe a part of some professional organizations. So I'm a part of the Kentucky Council of Teachers of English. And I started to think about how could I bring all of these teachers into a shared network where I share professional learning opportunities with them. I share the information that I'm gathering from policymakers and from attending conferences. And that really became a larger network so that I could connect teachers across the state so that it really amplifies the work that you're doing so that you're not in silos, but that you're working together. And then once you have an established network, that really helps with kind of the programmatic aims of Hope Street Group. So you will do a focus group and a data collection, and that will be driven by I'm sure by the Arizona K12 Center and what's happening in Arizona, depending on what will you conduct your first data collection on. And I believe the first year in Kentucky, it was on the professional growth and evaluation system. And once you know the context of your data collection, then you can use your network of teachers to think about who are the teachers that are going to have the opinions on this that are really going to help shape the policy implementation or the policy creation. And so it starts in your school, but then you can grow and you can share. If it's a survey, you can share that wide scale. And if it's focus groups, doing that within small groups and identifying those groups of teachers that want to share on that topic and have diverse opinions on the topic as well.
So I know that as a fellow, whenever I was a fellow for 2 years, the time investment really changed for me over the course of the 2 years. Um, I think 10 hours a month was pretty realistic initially. And then as I became more engaged in areas that I was really interested in exploring, I spent more time in Hope Street Rap support around me. Um, Carrie, do you mind speaking to sort of what you've seen as far as time investment goes and what professional learning looks like?
So I think the time can be steady, but it really can ebb and flow with the workload depending on what your passions are. So I work with a couple of fellows, and we discovered that really the legislative part of this all was kind of our passion. And so when our session is happening, it is crazy for us on top of the traditional kind of year. And so you'll have a couple of times a year where you will come together and work with fellows. But then you also have your monthly expectations. So monthly calls to kind of ground you in the work and bring you back together if you're far away from the fellows. And so that's an hour a month, but really can kind of extend more than that if you see something in that call that you're like, oh, I'm gonna work on that this month. I'm gonna write a blog post this month, and so you can extend that. And during the data collection, which in Kentucky we have done twice a year. It's a little bit more because you are holding focus groups and you are creating messaging and sharing with your network of teachers. But since that only happens about 1 or 2 times a year, you can see that, okay, this is going to last for this long, and you can plan for that in your schedule. But like I said, it really comes down to you find the passion and the you are really driven towards, and then you'll kind of distribute your time based on, and 10 hours a month is really, I think that's really a reasonable understanding, and you'll find that once you're really passionate about it, you'll want to do more than that. At least I found that I did.
Right. And can I also add on this one? You had talked about finding other ways to advocate, and I apologize. I just wanted to mention too that this will give you maybe some time or some parameters to start building those relationships with policymakers, whether they're in your building, outside of your building. It will also be a way for you to just create space for leadership for yourself, carving out that time that you need to grow and to learn what you'll need to do to advocate from a place of facts and support, not just that place of passion. There's also a lot of links that we have coming up around the TEL survey that will be coming to Arizona, or maybe looking at ways that you can leverage if you're an NBCT. Maybe this would also be something that you want to bring to the network or to the work that you're doing as an NBCT in Arizona. So there are lots of different ways that this time investment will also pay into those other things that you're doing, or will help strengthen those other advocacy roles that you already fill.
Angela, that's a really great point. I'm also a part of a couple of other teacher fellowships, and the work really can build off of like itself and grow. And I do find that I feel like I'm amplifying my time and not adding to my time.
Exactly. Anything that we can do to help teachers double up their efforts rather than spreading themselves thinner. And I really feel like that's a focus of Hope Street, is doubling up and really building up your capacity rather than spreading yourself thinner. And then also, as we move on to the next slide, we've been hearing from Carrie, which has been fantastic. Thank you for giving us the bird's eye view. But talking about how we really want to help Arizona teachers find a network, find a voice, or find a niche that will help them move to those professional goals, those aspirations that they have, and bringing together educators from all parts of our state, not just people that are located here in Phoenix or just located in the hub in Tucson, but really making sure that we are providing a network by which teachers from all corners of the state, all area codes, are able to come together and really work to build their capacity. Carrie, is that something that you have also found through your work as a fellow?
Sorry, I think I got unmuted myself for a second. Yes, so I have found that I work with teachers in the western part of the state, maybe sometimes more than right here in my own city, and it really just depends on the work that's happening. And so there are teachers in the western part of the state that are really writing about their practice a lot, and so my interests align with that, and I have gained skills on how to write about the work that we're doing and work about our profession. And so I work with teachers across the state on that. But then there might be some teachers in Eastern Kentucky that are working on teacher induction programs, and that's something that I feel very passionately about as well. And so it's really about finding the networks and tapping into those networks and using them across the whole state, and then that's when we can go back to Kentucky Department of Education and say, hey, here's what's happening all across the state, and it becomes even more powerful then.
Right. And I really appreciate you saying that, because that is in perfect line with our leadership goal at the Arizona K12 Center for our Arizona teachers. We know that the greatest influence on our students are our teachers. And anytime that our teachers are able to step up and take those leadership roles or build upon their own learning, it's going to have a greater impact on the community, on the students, and on the profession. So thank you so much for speaking to that personally. Is there anything else, Brad, that you wanted to add, and then we can move on to the timeline?
No, I think you know, I mean, Carrie could run this program, and that's true of several fellows, and I think that, you know, creating really intentional supports around teacher leadership efforts, and just creating the conditions that allow someone to develop the confidence, competence, and credibility to really lead the profession. I mean, Carrie's living proof of that. I will say that, you know, looking at the time commitments, we are very cognizant as an organization that our teachers are classroom teachers, and that, you know, I know in Kentucky the month of August is a time whenever teachers need to be focused on the classroom, and we respect that calendar commitment. And then, you know, there are times in the school year whenever teachers are stretched very thin, whether that's trying not to pull your hair out in December, or getting the year started right in January, and then the testing window as well. And so, you know, we've really built a program of professional learning that understands that the most valuable commodity a teacher has is time. And so, you know, that's an ongoing conversation. So I don't want that to keep an interested teacher from applying for the fellowship. You know, this is a very fluid process. That's the only other thing that I would add.
Thank you so much, Brad. All right, we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at what the timeline will look like for Hope Street here in Arizona.
Cool. Well, this is Celia again, and I think I can probably pick this up, but obviously open to feedback. I love that we are coming to you, folks in Arizona, from 3 different time zones, as Hope Street Group is a virtual organization, but we're so excited to be on the ground with the AZ K12 Center. And I wanted to take the opportunity before I go through this timeline to mention that we have, we're starting this state fellowship, and there are templates, Kentucky being the first one, which is why we've been so grateful that Brad and Carrie could join us tonight. But we have 4 state fellowships, actually, and Kentucky and Hawaii were the first 2 in that order. And we have just closed out, or we're about to close out, our first 2-year cohort of both Tennessee and North Carolina fellows. So really exciting. And I think it speaks to just this growing family of Hope Street Group fellows with even more opportunity now with a partnership with the K12 Center to be part of that sort of family. Like, at the risk of sounding hokey, it really is like that. And it's folks that are connected not just across their own state, but across the country. And speaking to that, we have had a national teacher fellowship for the past several years that, as we grow our state programming, we are sort of taking a pause on. But we have a current cohort that actually has Arizona representation. And this photo here that on this slide features Danielle Brown, who is a teacher in Sierra Vista, and I know it has so much to share about her work nationally on the topics of teacher preparation and just rural teachers. But she's also done a whole lot within the state and continues to. So I want to point you to, and I will in a follow-up email, Danielle Brown's bio. And I believe if you follow her on Twitter, and you might already, because she's a rock star, she would be a great second resource in addition to these Kentucky fellows and other state fellows who have similar programs, as a Hope Street Group fellow that really understands the landscape there in Arizona. And she's done great work with the K12 Center already. So this is just a perfect harmony now as we launch this fellowship. And when we do Q&A here, I might pose some questions to Danielle. I think she might join us on this, and maybe she can pipe up about state-specific context. But thank you, Danielle, and thank you to Carrie, obviously, for being on this call as well. For my part, my name is Celia, but you'll probably know me as fellowship@hopestreetgroup.org, because starting now and through the fellowship cycle, I man that inbox at Hope Street Group and this process. So I will definitely reach out after this session and share the recording with you, but also push you back to where the recording will live, which is our landing page for the application itself. So our application window, and I'll share with you what that app site looks like here in a second, but our application window is the entire month of April. We're just keeping it really clean. April 1st start, April 30th it closes. That is a hard deadline, folks. So we know it's a really busy time of year, but we're hoping with this info session webinar and just sort of aggressive promotion, you will feel prepared to apply early and not be panicking at the end of the month there. And we'll go through the components and what that application actually requires of you. But suffice to say, you have a full month to get it in and to submit. What that means on the Hope Street Group and the Arizona K12 Center's end is we will man a robust review process of all applicants. Something really cool is, like Carrie said, the testament to her being on this call, so many of our processes are really teacher-led, right? So we preach teacher voice and we practice it as well. So the first round of reviews, the first people, the first eyes seeing your applications coming out of Arizona are going to be fellow teachers across the country. So current and former teacher fellows in our other state and national programs that really know what the Hope Street Group experience looks like and want to help us recruit people that are going to be like the next generation as this new program starts in Arizona. So that's what's going to happen the first couple weeks of May is a robust review process. And you can appreciate as teachers on this call that, they're fitting that in after school and on the weekends. So we do a lot ample time for that, but we will proceed with the next round of folks with phone interviews with Angelia. So it's sort of whittling down what we believe as teacher scored applications are the best candidates for this fellowship. And those folks will be interviewed sort of in mid to late May. And then we will notify everybody about their application status, hopefully before Memorial Day weekend. That is the goal. We know school is wrapping up for you all. and I'll touch on how we need to best reach you to make sure we can get you at school or on your summer break if it comes to that. But we have a really tight timeline, and we want to be able to reach out to you so you can plan your summer and your next year before the end of your school year. So that's sort of how it builds up this spring and early summer. And then the convening, the first orientation, which is required for all accepted fellows. So that will be a question on the application is, can you commit to those days? Will be held in Tucson on June 21st and 22nd. So those are weekdays. But that orientation is the first chance to be with your fellow fellows and meet the director and get that first round of professional learning that really prepares you for the rest of the fellowship. So it is in fact mandatory. And we know how busy teachers are throughout the year, and then summer break comes and there's so many competing interests too. So we wanted to flag this early and often that this is a required piece of the fellowship. And we encourage you to apply next year if those dates don't work for you this year, but you are still interested, because you will definitely be engaged by other teachers in the state that are teacher fellows with this work, like Carrie spoke to. So that's where we're starting. And then I'm happy to show you this landing page to show you sort of, Carrie and Brad and Angelia have spoken to the why you would apply to this fellowship. I want to show you how, so that it makes a little more sense and you can feel prepared. So anything to add before I switch to my screen, Brad, Angelia, or Carrie, about the timeline perhaps?
I can speak briefly to the orientation if you would like
Sure.
me to share why that's so important. At the orientation, that's really where all the professional learning really kickstarts. So you get a solid overview of Hope Street programming and what that will look like from a timeline of your experience, at least through the first semester. Understanding how to build peer-to-peer relationships, visualizing who is in your direct and indirect networks, and then once you get a network, how do you interact with those folks, and then also how to engage others virtually, and really honing in on what your story is, your teacher leadership journey, and creating a very self-reflective process that carries you through the learning that happens in that first semester. But more importantly, it's about relationship building, fellow to fellow. Hope Street creates the conditions for professional growth and leadership development, but the secret of the sauce is that there are very intentional relationships that are formed between the fellows, and the fellows end up driving the work over time. And so that orientation is an essential piece to kickstart a longer term learning process.
And Brad, I'm so happy that you mentioned that professional relationship and how that drives it. And I just want to encourage anybody who is on the webinar tonight or watching this that there's no cutoff. You don't have to have been teaching for X amount of years or have certain accomplishments under your belt in order to pursue this endeavor. We really are encouraging our innovative teachers, whoever you may be in Arizona, to give this a shot. Take a minute to look through the application, watch the webinar. If there's somebody else in your building that is not on this webinar tonight that might make a great candidate for this opportunity, encourage them to go online and watch this once it's housed at the application site, and ask them or encourage them to take a few minutes and do the application. The greater our pool of applicants, really the better chance we have at capturing that voice of Arizona educators, and that really is truly what the Arizona K12 Center is about, is elevating that voice and speaking to what teachers in Arizona, what they need and how they can best serve their students.
Absolutely, you nailed it, and that's we're looking for a really great representative and diverse cohort. So both with geography, what you teach, how long you've been teaching. It is so rewarding, and Brad can speak to this as a fellow and a director now, to work alongside folks from all different pockets of your state that you may have never visited, may never even intend to visit, but you get to find those commonalities and really just grow together and grow the impact of such teacher voice in your state and even nationally, like I mentioned, with that national network of teachers you tap into. It's quite powerful. So I'm going to, Angelia, if it's okay with you, change to my screen and make sure that folks can see how we actually will have folks apply. I have up here our main landing page for Hope Street Group, which is apply.hopestreetgroup.org. As I mentioned, we've recruited for our 4 state programs, our existing state programs, earlier this year. So we're finalizing right now new teacher fellows in Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Hawaii. We also have our first local teacher fellowship that's launched on the island of Kauai in Hawaii. So because folks are still finding this webpage, this information is encompassed here as well. But what we're launching now includes Arizona and Utah. So that's where you'll find on this landing page, if you happen to find this link or you share it, and maybe you know teachers in Utah too that would be interested in an opportunity like this one you're about to embark on. You can point them to apply.hopestreetgroup.org. And what's on this page, in addition to the links to the individual pages, which I'll pull up, is sort of an impact video about why we do what we do and why this building of teacher networks is so powerful, and some sort of general across the states, across all programs, what we're looking for and what this fellowship means. But what I hope is that you see a lot more promotion and you share and you visit this link often, which is Arizona specific, which is here. You can see the URL at the top, and I will point you back to that tomorrow after this webinar is over. This Arizona landing page is the same place, you can find the information specific to the Arizona Fellowship, and also where come April 1st you will apply. You'll see here there's the sign in and sign up buttons. When you're getting started, you'll click sign up, and then of course when you revisit this page, you can click sign in after you have your email login. Everything that's on this page, if you are more of a I need to print this out and circle things and map out my thoughts and what I'm going to do when I apply, it is in PDF form right here. A second resource is sort of our 2-pager that describes what these fellowships do, like more generally, what a teacher fellowship is with Hope Street Group and now with the AK12 Center, the Arizona K12 Center. But that might be a secondary resource, not just for your FYI, but something you might share with your administrator as you're trying to give them the heads up that you're going to apply to this program. And it's a nice snapshot of what we do and why and how we do it actually too. So I encourage you to download both of these and revisit this page, but this is the main page you can point yourself to and anybody you think would be interested in this opportunity. What's included on this page, and then also the PDF, and Angelia mentioned we will embed this archived recording on this page too, so that'll be an additional resource for you if you just want to remember what was covered. This includes what we're going to have you do. So what is the what are the requirements of the application? And I'll walk through what those look like on the site. Again, we have the availability to attend the orientation as a requirement. So personal background information, narrative questions, upload of a resume, and expression of support from your school or district administrator for participation. Okay, so what that is just a checkbox within the site, but that is a requirement for you to request it and for them to fulfill that requirement in the site as your principal, so they know and they have a heads up that you're applying to this opportunity. So I'll show you how that works. Also right here, because you're some days away from the application even opening, we've given you a heads up to the questions that we'll ask. It's just 3 narrative responses, and this is the section that will be scored by your teacher peers across the country. So teacher fellows like Carrie, who somehow slip this in to their really busy jam-packed weeks and give a thoughtful review of the ways you've answered these questions. And actually, in fact, these questions have been formulated with the help of current and former teacher fellows, which is really cool, as they know best what they're looking for in a fellow, and what you would bring to the fellowship. So some hints of what we're looking for are here right in the wording of the questions, and we encourage you to take a look at these and dig back into your history as a teacher and teacher leader for some great examples of your collaborative nature and the ways this fellowship might help advance that work. Before I switch over with somebody wanting to pipe in, I'm happy to share this slide here. Brad or Angelia.
No, Celia, I think you did a great job covering the logistics for all of our webinar participants. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll flip to what this would look like if you go to make an account. I have a sort of dummy dummy applicant account here. But you'll see here again, there's more information on this page, so you can consider applying. And please, like we said, share this with your colleagues. Consider it more the merrier and not just competition, especially across the state, so we can get that depth and breadth. If you were to apply, your first task when you sign in is going to ask which fellowship you're applying to, because of course we have others. So we need to make sure to keep this organized, and you'll see it's very obvious that we are not actually recruiting for these top 5 applications that have just completed. So you will you'll select rather Arizona Teacher Fellowship, and that is your first task. But when it says complete, that is not that's the beginning, but that's not the end of the application. It's something, it's just you have to scroll down and then see what applications are open. So you'll see this one says in progress because I already started it, but when the application already actually opens on the 1st, you'll see application open and it'll say apply now, and then show this deadline of 4:30, and you would click apply now instead of edit. But now that I'm in process, I'm going to show you what it looks like in the sort of pane of the actual user, and it shows the different components that you'll complete. I've found this website to be pretty user-friendly, but I'm embedded in it every day, all day. So I will caution you that even though they're listed in a certain way, you don't have to complete them in this order, but you do have to complete all 4 of these steps before you can click submit. So the way these will look, if you start application, the personal information is just a basic form about who you are and where you teach. The narrative responses are those I just showed you. Upload resume, you can use a PDF or a doc or a docx format, one of those 3 for a current resume. We don't want you to stress too much over the resume. That's not something we're fine-tooth combing and judging you by. We just want it to be consistent with what you're putting forth in your narrative responses and in your personal information, so we can really have a full picture of who you are as a teacher and as an applicant. The request administrator support piece is that what I mentioned, it's a step for you that's required, but it's actually 2-part, because you'll see here, if I requested administrator support, it's going to ask you who your administrator is, first name, last name, email address. Email address, again, how do you know this person? So again, you can choose your building level admin, which most people do, or if you know you have the support of your superintendent, you can direct this request to that person as well. There's some tips here for sort of having them check their spam or junk mail. We have done all we can on this end to make sure these don't get hung up, but for good reason. Schools have more aggressive security systems, right? So they might be trapped in a firewall, go to junk or spam because of the way we've worded it, or that it's an unknown address. So what I would suggest is, even before you do the other components of the application, you actually give your administrator a heads up that you're applying to this, and use the resources I pointed to on that apply website, that landing page, and tell them that you're excited about this opportunity, and they will be getting an automatic request for support. And for their part, doesn't have to be a long letter. There is a text box so they can rave on and on about you, but it's really a simple checkbox that says they support your 2 to 3 days in the next school year, potentially out of the classroom, for Hope Street Group fellowship activities. Now you'll see that first orientation convening is in the summer, so they won't need to worry about it this school year or really until the fall. We do everything we can to plan convenings on, say, like a Friday and a weekend, so that it's not taking any time in the middle of your week. But that will be the question that's asked, is do they support the 2 to 3 days out of the classroom? So as much information you can give them about the program so they feel prepared to lend that support to you, please do, and have them check out for that email, make sure that they look at it and click on it so they can submit their piece of this, because you cannot, unfortunately, submit application even if you've requested support if they haven't then logged it. And what you'll see is complete, 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 and this will say pending here next to request administrator support if they've not yet finished that piece. So I think Brad, and maybe even Carrie too, can speak to this. It can be a hang up in the application process, which is why we have this for a full month open, and we encourage you to get a head start on that piece so that's not what's keeping you from meeting the deadline, which is 11:59 p.m. on the 30th. Any tips, Carrie or Brad, even with how to navigate this website or anything that might help folks feel prepared for the technological piece of this?
No, I mean, I think you've done a pretty good job providing an overview. It is fairly intuitive as you are actually doing it. I would suggest double checking the landing page with all of the requirements just to make sure you have all your ducks in a row. I think what we have seen over time is that really two things stand out to me, and I've been reviewing these since 2014 because I was a fellow, reviewing other applicants from across a couple different states at that time. So you can tell as a reviewer whenever someone has rushed their app, and so I think that taking the time to get started early is wise. I think that there's also been some hangups, not getting a lot of responsiveness from building level or district level administrators whenever you put off that ask to the last minute. And so, being very proactive to get support from your building or district level folks, I would highly suggest that. Celia, is there anything else you'd add to that?
That's it. Just early and often, and like you said, don't rush the important piece of this, which is the narrative response section. I will mention this: they're 500-word max answers to each of those three questions. So it's not that longer is necessarily better, but those are pretty packed questions. You'll see again if I can show you what we're asking you, and it's really just an opportunity to these teacher peers across the country to, with some state context, sure, but also something that translates across the states about what you've done and what you would bring to the fellowship. And as Angelia mentioned, it's not about how long your history is in teaching. It's sort of how hungry you are for an opportunity like this to deepen your professional learning and deepen your engagement with your peers and leaders. And so we're looking for as many concrete examples as you have of those sort of dispositions towards this type of work, and trust that, again, it's a peer review, so you will be judged fairly, and we just hope that the other pieces of the application are an easy, stress-free, 1, 2, 3, 4 for you, and then you can really focus on the content of your narrative responses. I will open it up to Q&A in a second, but I did have somebody ask about sort of the competitiveness of this. Well, this is a new fellowship, so it's sort of to be determined, right? But we do want as many applicants as possible, and historically in our state fellowships, especially as they've grown, and what Hope Street Group does is sort of known in among peers across the state. It is a very competitive process, and will take from between 10 to 30% of the applicants ultimately. So it's a manageable sized cohort, and it really features those great and intimate relationships across the teachers and also with the director that helps get things done, and can be further broken down maybe in work group structures or other things to really get down to the nitty gritty and express these competencies that you're developing through the learning. So there's not a magic number or percentage of acceptance rate right now with this program because it's brand new, but trust that you have some good company in your applicants. If judging by the number of folks interested in this webinar, we'll have a whole lot of applicants to this program. So thank you for your interest. And Angelia, Carrie, Brad, I'm happy to turn it over to you for any sort of final remarks and or start answering questions from folks that have attended.
Thank you, Carrie, for doing such a great job of walking all of our potential Hope Street Fellows through what the application will look like. I know that now I have a much more clear view as well, and feel more confident if this was something that I was going to pursue. And again, we just really, on behalf of the Arizona K12 Center, we really want to encourage our teacher leaders to take this moment to maybe push themselves a little bit and think about considering this opportunity, knowing what the time investment might look like, but also what the rewards, based on what you heard from Carrie and her story from Kentucky, knowing how much this could help elevate you and your practice and how you feel about your profession, and maybe also what you contribute to your profession. Again, Arizona K12 Center is a huge proponent of our teachers, and we would do anything to support our teachers, and that's why we felt so confident in encouraging Hope Street to consider Arizona for their new teacher fellowship partnership, and we just feel incredibly lucky to be able to offer this to our teachers around the state.
Excellent. Thank you so much. There are a couple questions I'm happy to answer here, or like at least pose to those of you on the call. I wanted to point to one more sort of sidebar here when you're in your applicant screen, and you can go through and click settings or whatnot. It will show your progress, so you know it's pretty clear what's incomplete and what you need to finish. You can go back and edit until you submit application. So if you think of something you wanted to add to your narrative responses, you can until you click submit. These can be sort of in the works. Even if you've technically finished, you can go back and edit. But it will show you your progress over here on the side and what's left. And then withdraw application would be if you learn that you can no longer fulfill this commitment, or because this fellowship is designed for classroom teachers and instructional coaches, so folks that work with students in public or charter schools. We definitely want you to be excited about this opportunity, but if you feel at any point like it's not right for you, or maybe you have been offered an administrative position for the next school year and you'd like to remove yourself from the pool, so A, you stop getting emails from me about it, and B, you give another person a chance to submit their best application and be considered, we do ask that you click this withdraw application button, or else we'll still consider you sort of an application in the works. So that's the last thing I would mention about the technical aspects. The fellowship deadline is really underscored here, and we will send you reminders. When you create an email address for this, because we have correspondence starting during the school year, but also maybe going into early summer, I would recommend that you use an email address to create an account that you check often. I would hate to send some timely correspondence to your school email if, say, you weren't checking it over spring break or something to that effect. And certainly when we send announcements right before your summer break, we want to make sure we can reach you. So please list an email address that works best for you, and also phone numbers where we can reach you, just so we can make sure we're in touch. And please, email me at fellowship@hopestreetgroup.org if you have any questions about this process, but I will be at the top of your inbox tomorrow. So that's handy for you. And then there's also frequently asked questions on our website. I did have a question about the administrator portion. I'm sorry if I was unclear. When you request administrator support and give us through this system your admin's name and email address, it prompts an automatic email to that person at that address that says, this teacher is an applicant for a fellowship and they've requested an expression of support. Please, check this checkbox, and it will prompt them to get into the website. They have to create a quick password. That's helpful if people actually get multiple requests. So if you have competition within your school, then a principal can create one set of login information, and then go in and click the checkbox. But it will be prompted via email to the address you provide. So make sure to double check that so there's no typos, so they actually are receiving the email, and then again, remind them to check their spam for it. The orientation was a second question. Yes, sorry, that is June 21st and 22nd. That is in Tucson. So your travel expenses will be reimbursed, and you will also be put up there at the selected hotel, but accepted fellows will receive more detailed information about that. We just ask that you hold those dates and make sure you're able to travel for that 2-day convening in Tucson on those dates.
And can I add one thing to that real quick, Celia?
Sure, please.
Just wanted to let you know, if you're concerned about that happening in conjunction with the Teacher Leadership Institute, this has been planned to work around that. So please don't let that limit you. If you've already committed to going to teacher leadership, that this has been built with that in mind and will not impede on your TLI time.
Yeah, great point, and very thoughtful of you all to consider that with this opportunity, so people can, be as many places as they can be to advance their teacher leadership. Somebody asked if they're transitioning to a district, so maybe next school year 17-18 will be in a new district. We do ask that you use this as an opportunity, if you've already been hired, to get your new and forthcoming administrator support, since they will ultimately be the one to get to brag about you as a teacher fellow, but also sort of authorize that release time, those 2 to 3 days in the school year that are potential to be out of the classroom. So please do and use that administrator's information for this process, even if you're at a different school now. We've had another question about the application window. It is open just for this month, so April 1st through the 30th this year. And then we'll get this first cohort going. And then we do add fellows in a second year and give most fellows the opportunity, if they are enjoying the work and, like Carrie did, just really have dug in and want more and feel like they want to deepen their engagement. Most folks are extended the opportunity for a second year, but we will recruit new fellows to add to the cohort. So it will be a yearly recruitment process. If you are unable or unwilling to commit this year, it will open again next year, and maybe a little earlier in the school year as well, like in January or February. So once you're on our list, and we would love to share with you future opportunities if this year doesn't work out. And yes, to clarify, there are no teaching year requirements to apply. So again, it is a competitive process, but that doesn't mean it's only veteran teachers that are part of these cohorts. We really look for a diversity, and great ideas come from sort of every level of your career. So please do not be inhibited by that requirement. And it's, again, just sort of the approach you take to even leading outside of your classroom as part of a state collaborative like this. Sorry, I'm taking through these as fast as I can. Any of you want to color in while I continue to read these questions and make sure we can wrap up in short order?
I don't mind to speak just from the fellowship experience and seeing how the program has grown over time. If you're needing someone to stall. Do you need someone to stall, Celia?
Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm answering all the questions, and some of them are repeats, so I'm trying to make sure we address it all. Stall away, Brad Clark.
Okay, sounds good. Filibuster from Brad Clark. So, whenever we started the work in Kentucky, our state is, from far west to far east is probably about an 8-hour drive. We have very rural, mountainous areas in southeastern Kentucky. Louisville has, 1.5 million population. And then northern Kentucky, just south of Cincinnati, Ohio, is a very populated area, and central Kentucky is very populated. But then, you have a lot of distance and a lot of isolation, and teachers felt very isolated back in 2013 whenever we started this work. And I was one of them, feeling very isolated in my practice and probably leaving the profession. I was so frustrated. And then I came across Hope Street Group and found that I had much more in common with teachers from across the state than I did in my school building. And what I think is really profound for my professional growth as a teacher, whenever I was still a teacher, was that I realized that I needed to build the capacity of my peers at the school level. And I didn't realize that until teachers from across the state really built my capacity. And I realized that I had a responsibility and an accountability to meet the needs of the teachers on the ground that they walked on there at the school level. And then, that was just my experience. And then you extrapolate that out across 55 fellows over the past few years. And it's been a really profound professional learning experience. And really, I have relationships that will last my entire career now, and they span the entire state. Celia, did you have any other questions that you wanted to address?
Thank you. No, that was great, and Brad's a testament to our Grow Your Own program within Hope Street Group. We love to keep great teachers in the classroom, but when they can lead their peers after building those relationships, it's a beautiful thing as well. So I know we've run late, folks. I think we answered most questions. We are looking for, as I said, a diverse cohort. It will be a manageable size, and normally that means between 20 to 30, but we're really focused on quality to make sure that it's representative of the state and also the best folks that will collaborate and work together. So if I haven't mentioned that word collaborate enough, that's really what this is about. Somebody asked about leadership roles that will make you best suited. Well, there's a lot of that is sort of state context, right? But more impressive we find than how involved you've already been is, maybe even building level examples of how you really incited change and worked collaboratively to build consensus and get folks on board with an idea that maybe started small and maybe started at the classroom level, but was built out. So we love the idea of expanding your networks within Hope Street Group and with the AZ K12 Center, but there's not a checklist of how else you're affiliated, if I can be so blunt, right, Angelia?
Correct.
Great. Yes, and somebody asked about how you sort of budget your time once you're a fellow. That will absolutely be in a fire hose type onboarding process, explained better to you. And then some of it is feeling it out and really using those monthly check-ins with the director and with your peers to make sure you're on the right track and you're tracking against goals of the fellowship, but also your own personal and professional goals for your time in the fellowship. So we're never just like letting you loose and hoping you figure it out. It's very much collaborative and with a thought partner in the state director, which will be Angelia, every step of the way. So really look forward to getting you more information and having your applications roll in April 1st through the 30th. Please reach out to me at fellowship@hopestreetgroup.org if you have other questions. But we would look forward to starting to receive your applications if no more questions are needing answers.
No, and Celia, maybe we can just mention here that we are looking for a significant number of fellows. I know questions had been brought up about the competitive nature of this, and even though this is a competitive process for the application itself, we are looking for a fairly significant number of fellows. So this is not going to be something that only 5 people will be involved in. We are looking for a very healthy group of approximately 20 or so fellows. So we do really strongly encourage you to apply.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I want to point people back, as generic as this sounds, to our website. So not just the application website, but to hopestreetgroup.org and the teacher fellowship pages, because you can find bios there for Carrie, for Danielle Brown, who I mentioned is a national fellow working there in Arizona, and a whole host of folks and teacher leaders to follow on Twitter. And you can see artifacts of their work too. So if you really want more concrete examples to supplement sort of the testimony Carrie gave to the experience, there are links to some op-eds, and even we have an impact point sort of newsletter that shows quarterly what's going on in all of our programs, and those are some concrete examples of how those data collections have influenced education policy, and other inroads have been made with partners in the state. So not to cheat you out of examples, but I think Carrie might have had to jump off here on Eastern time. I really recommend you all dig deep on our application website, get prepared, and then thank you in advance for applying to this really awesome opportunity. And thank you, Angelia, for the partnership.
Definitely, we look forward to this.
Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks all. Take care.
Good night.